Good morning from the little town of St. Mary's, Ontario, Canada. My name is Marie and I'm here this morning to promote awareness of the signs and symptoms of the life-threatening condition, brain aneurysms, as well as the seriousness of ignoring the symptoms, as well as tell you about the life-threatening implications of being misdiagnosed because of a lack of awareness amongst the professional medical community. September is Brain Aneurysm Month. Burgundy is our color, and don't be a chicken, get scanned is our motto. An aneurysm is a weak point in a blood vessel wall, most commonly in an artery, forming a balloon-like projection. It almost always occurs at a point where the artery branches off. This condition by itself isn't especially harmful, but the artery is prone to rupture. A ruptured aneurysm is when the weakened artery breaks and allows uncontrolled bleeding to occur. An unruptured aneurysm may go unnoticed throughout a person's life, while a burst aneurysm could lead to the narrowing of the blood vessels in the brain, limiting the blood supply to the brain, which is a leading cause of disability, death, hydrocephalus, coma, or short-term and or permanent brain damage. Who is most likely to have one or more aneurysms? Number one is people who have a family history of brain aneurysms. Secondly are people who already have one. Interestingly, women are more likely to develop a brain aneurysm or to suffer a hemorrhage. In addition to this, high blood pressure and the use of cigarettes are also culprits of increasing the risk factor. Aneurysms often go undetected because they can have no symptoms until they rupture and bleed. When that happens, it can cause a sudden severe headache and nothing more than that. But it is usually nothing like any other headache you've ever had. It is very sudden or severe and the worst headache of your life. 1/3 to nearly half of patients have minor hemorrhages or warning leaks. The latter lead to a severe, devastating brain hemorrhage, and this is where I like to tell my story of survival. I was given a plane ticket to travel to the west coast of Canada to meet my family of first cousins and my aunt in 2005. Everything had gone smoothly in Calgary, and on the Sunday morning I got up as usual, prepared for church, and headed out the door of my cousin's home for a ride. When I arrived at church, I went in, sat down, and began to listen to the Sunday morning worship service. When straight out of the blue, I had the most powerful sensation of being hit in the back of the head with a fast line drive baseball. My vision became blurry, and I wondered to myself what might be going on. I started to see people through the distortion that was happening in my eyesight, but I made it a priority not to alarm anyone of what I was experiencing. When the service was over, we all went downstairs for coffee and an opportunity to meet lots of new people. I smiled, shook hands, and wondered to myself if I had possibly eaten something that wasn't quite right. As I continued to chat, however, it became very clear that something must be wrong with my vision. When I looked at people, their heads had separated and I could see half up there and half down there. Split vision. I kept silent about this, and even when going up the flight of stairs seemed difficult, I told no one. I didn't want to appear to be a chicken. I went back to my cousin's home that morning, had a nap, and told everyone I was tired. My cousin came upstairs and offered me a poultice to apply and thought my symptoms might pass. The next day, when everyone was going out for dinner, I soon declined because I had begun vomiting and thought I may have contracted food poisoning. At this point, it seemed to be the only thing that made any sense at all. I was seeing light shows and silver lines across my line of focus, but still did not want to alarm anybody. The next day, I flew to Vancouver to meet with more family and kept silent about my symptoms. After the holiday was over, I flew back to Ontario, and when I landed in the Toronto airport, my daughter met me there. I told her I wasn't feeling well and asked if she'd mind taking me to the hospital. They kept me all night for observation and determined, without any testing at all, that I was good to leave and if symptoms worsened, to go to my nearest emergency department. When I was back home, I made an appointment with my family physician, and he sent me to a doctor in London. When I was taken in and questioned about my symptoms, I was told that I had women's problems, depression, and I was given a prescription for antidepressants. I tried those for a few weeks, but I was still experiencing vision problems, light shows, silver lines, split vision, headaches. I made an appointment with my family doctor again, and asked him what I should be doing about my vision problems, in particular the light shows I was experiencing. He told me just to pull over to the side of the road when I had them and watch the show. He is the professional medical expert here, and at this point I'm only a woman with women's problems, depression. After a few months of antidepressants, I went back to the doctor that had prescribed them, and I told him thanks for his professional input, but I had chosen to discontinue the meds, and because I'm a believer in the Lord Jesus Christ, I would be trusting him as my great physician. About 6 months later, I had a routine eye exam with my optometrist, Dr. Smybert, and I told him about my vision problems. He immediately, without hesitation, recommended a Doppler test to be taken that measures the blood flow in the main artery leading to my brain. As a result of that test, it was discovered that I had a brain aneurysm. That was followed up with an MRI and an MRA angiogram. It was now obvious I had a couple of brain aneurysms. I met with a neurologist, Dr. Lowney, at the University Hospital in London, and interventional options were discussed. I chose of the options available to have a clipping of the artery done in my brain. After more testing, it was somewhat surprising to discover I had several other intracranial aneurysms. In 2006, I had an extremely invasive 7-hour brain surgery, and when I awoke in the ICU unit, I witnessed a woman right in front of me die from exactly the same surgery I had just survived. I knew then and there that God had given me a second lease on life. Recovery went well, and 2 friends supported me during the following 6 weeks. I do not have the debilitating symptoms common to many other survivors, but I do experience vision problems periodically, depression, forgetfulness from time to time, and my depth perception does not function properly, and I have challenges with stairs and escalators. These symptoms are not visible, and most do not understand or support me any longer. My remaining aneurysm is monitored by MRI. Here in Canada, awareness barely exists, and living from day to day with a ticking time bomb in my head can cause anxiety and stress. 2 no-nos for anyone that has these. In Canada, awareness barely exists, and survivors are everywhere, silently enduring much that is not necessary. I've been to Phoenix, Arizona, and was able to share my story there with survivors at the Joe Niekro Foundation. That is strongly supported by the medical community and has made huge inroads to bring in awareness to the United States. Here in Canada, hopefully there will come a day when awareness is a priority and countless people's lives will be spared by early awareness. I have a strong family history of brain aneurysms, with my mother dying from a ruptured one over 20 years ago. My aunt lost partial vision due to a brain aneurysm. My sister has 2 brain aneurysms that surgery has not been an option for. And my daughter, that is married with 2 girls and 1 son, in her late 20s, was diagnosed with a couple of brain aneurysms also. With 5 of us females in the immediate family being diagnosed, you can see why I have a strong desire to spread awareness about this deadly affliction that claims more lives than most any other causes of death. It is estimated that 1 in 50 people will develop brain aneurysms, and for 40% of those people, it will be fatal, while 66% of the survivors will be left with permanent neurological impairment. And unfortunately, that statistic is based on diagnosis as well as autopsy statistics. Most people don't even know they have an aneurysm and they live with it. I have been a part of the Familial Intracranial Aneurysm Study that is a collaborative research effort of scientists in the United States, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand to identify possible genes that may increase the risk of development for aneurysms in blood vessels of the brain. The study has involved 475 families with multiple affected family members. Researchers also hope to determine the effect of environmental factors such as cigarette smoking and high blood pressure on the expression of the genes. It is vitally important to be your own advocate and demand a scan. Demand intervention. Do not leave the hospital if you think things are not right. Do not be a chicken. It has been my privilege to share my story of survival with you and to give you hope. God is not done with any of us yet, so don't be a chicken. Take up the challenge and spread awareness.